system, Neo. That system is our enemy. But when you're inside, you look around, what do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, carpenters, the very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy. You have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inert, so hopelessly dependent on the system, that they will fight to protect it. Were you listening to me, Neo? Or were you looking at the woman in the red dress?
I was...
Look again. Who's it?
This isn't the Matrix.
No. It's another training program designed to teach you one thing. If you are not one of us, you are one of them.
What are they?
Sentient programs. They can move in and out of any software still hardwired to their system. That means that anyone we haven't unplugged is potentially an agent. Inside the Matrix, they are everyone, and they are no one.
We have survived by hiding from them, by running from them. But they are the gatekeepers. They are guarding all the doors, they are holding all the keys, which means that sooner or later, someone is going to have to fight them.
Someone.
I won't lie to you, Neo. Every single man or woman who has stood their ground, everyone who has fought an agent has died. But where they have failed, you will succeed.
Why?
I've seen an agent punch through a concrete wall. Men have emptied entire clips at them and hit nothing but air. Yet their strength and their speed are still based in a world that is built on rules. Because of that, they will never be as strong or as fast as you can be.
What are you trying to tell me? That I can dodge bullets?
No, Neo. I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to.
My name's Paul.
My name's Andy.
This is the Unpenned Show on Monday, the 4th of August, 2014. Exactly 100 years since the outbreak of World War One. Plenty of history on the internet about World War One, and I do think that we should have a brief outline of everyone should know World War One and the atrocity that it was. Funny how that I didn't actually realise the anniversary was the 4th of August until the news this morning. And yet yesterday I spent the day at Beamish Museum. And that's all about the war years and just a little before, from the mid-1800s onwards. Lots and lots there. I highly recommend it for everybody to go. Beamish Museum, just north of Durham. Chesley Street, I think it is.
I've not been myself yet.
Highly recommend it. Certainly puts things in perspective. I'll give you an example that they have a drift mine there, which is a mine that you can walk in. And the drift mine is you just walking in and you're walking downhill all the time. And we're going back to this mine. It was less than 100 years ago. It was it was actually producing coal. I mean, Durham, Northumbria, and the northeast on the whole was really responsible for what we now know to be the Industrial Revolution. It was the very engine that built the engines that the tracks carried, and the capacity to make steel was exported around the world, along with the coal to do it. And when you actually see the physical method of how it was mined, with a hand axe, small charges, and a lamp, a Davy lamp. When you see how it was done, the trucks that they loaded it into, and the confines they had to work in, and the darkness, the absolute darkness, that it was like working by candlelight on your own. And we really should remember that that's just about one lifetime ago.
Yeah. That's where my heritage comes from, mining in Newcastle.
I walked down the drift mine, about 80 yards it was in, and although I'm not even 5'8" or 5'8" on my best days, I was too tall. I had to bend. And as we got into the drift mine, I found that I was bending considerably more. And the height of the miners, if they to walk in without bending, would have had to be about 5'3". They would sometimes have to walk the best part of an hour to get to the workspace, to get to the seam. But they weren't paid for that hour. They were paid for the tallies they attached to the trucks that were brought back to the surface. And it was their tally that they put on the bottom that was how they got paid.
Yeah, proper piecework.
Proper piecework. We bemoan our situations today, and yet we give no credit for how we've got here to those that had to suffer and endure considerably worse situations, worse conditions, authoritarian and tyranny like we would no longer accept.
And no welfare system.
And I make the claim that although we might moan and groan about what we have today, I think we're looking at this all wrong.
My granddad was actually in the workhouse because he was he didn't know who his father was, who was born out of the good old saying, born out of wedlock, in Durham, and the family down in Castleford found out that he was in the workhouse, and so they actually sent for him. They sent for him and they gave him a bedroom and they put him up and they found him a job, and his first job was looking after the pit ponies in Castleford.
Beamish is a fantastic day out. It really is.
Yeah.
It's maybe not for younger children. It's not for younger children. I don't know why I'm saying that. It's for people who will appreciate that there was a time when this country was respected throughout the world. There was a time when this country was the centre of Western civilization as we describe it today. But the conditions those men had to work in, and the life expectancy was 50 if you were lucky, 50-ish.
Built on slavery. It was life of slavery.
Well, do you know what I said when I came out of the drift mine? I said, these people did a lifetime down here. I couldn't do a day.
No.
I couldn't have done a day. I mean, I am clocking nearly 50. And I thought, I couldn't do it. How weak are we?
And you started as boys. And
yes, very much 11 years old.
Yeah.
The rules are on there. There's actually some... There's a bait hut and like a tally collection, and you pick your lamp up, and there's rules on the wall. There's actually working conditions and rules on the wall. You can read them. And it says how many hours 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds can work. I think it's a complex journey that we've been on from there. But I don't think anybody would tolerate that now, which is why it doesn't exist. I know it was modernised over the years, and the men perhaps did have better conditions and better machinery to work with. But that doesn't take anything from the fact that there was a time when they didn't have that.
Yeah.
These men were alone for 8 hours a day. And if they need to go to the loo, do you know where they went to the loo? In the coal truck.
Right, yeah.
It was somebody else's problem to deal with at the other end.
The other end,
Quite remarkably, really, and they would take these trucks. I can't imagine how much was. I didn't ask how much was in the truck, but they looked like they were maybe a couple of bags of coal, 2 or 3 bags of coal for sure, maybe more, 4 or 5 bags of coal, and they'd 11 to 13 trucks a day by hand.
Yeah,
just undermining the seam, putting the charges in, blowing the seam up, and they weren't paid. It had to be coal that went in there. Any rocks and anything were just thrown out, and it was all weighed before it was unloaded. It was. You look at the manual labour. You look at the labour exchange that had to be given. We talked about last week in the 1700s. It would take 20 bodies, 20 persons to make the food for 21.
Yeah.
And then you look at the way we mine coal. Amazing.
And
yet this is a well-respected career, in this part of the world.
Yeah.
They got a house and free coal.
Yeah, if you got down the pit,
Yeah, it was a well. I mean, and it was dead men's shoes. You took your father's place.
Yeah.
It was like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was 304 pits here in the northeast. You know, just imagine the network underneath where we live.
Mm-hmm.
And 170,000 miners
Mm-hmm.
in the height of employment.
Yeah.
And you get to see the cottages they lived in. You get to see the conditions they lived in. And it really does actually smack you in the face that it's just over one lifetime ago.
Yeah.
And yet the Second World War isn't 2 lifetimes ago, is it?
No, it isn't. No.
And then the speed of progress that we've managed to achieve.
Yeah, I'm the third generation of coal mining families, but as the pit shut, and my great granddad, he was instigated one of the trade unions. He was one of the first, and he got blacklegged for it, and he got thrown out of work, and that's how we come to be down in West Yorkshire, because they travelled from Newcastle down to West Yorkshire looking for work. But by the time he'd got to West Yorkshire, they sent a telegram to say, don't employ Jimmy Lamb, he's a trade unionist.
Boy, would we if we were transported back 100 years, we really would have something to moan about.
We would, yeah.
But the lives we live now and the comparative luxury, I mean, well, not comparative, it's luxury we live in compared to what they had.
Oh, yeah.
It's been built on debt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in those days, let's go back to the time of the First World War and the 20 years after it.
Mm-hmm.
Debt was just your rent.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't loans as such.
No.
In the modern age that we live, we forgot that money had intrinsic value in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
We only went on to a fiat currency, as it's called, which is currency that's represented by the credit and faith of the people who use it, which is us. And we don't really understand what that means, but we should understand it. But first of all, currency that has value in and of itself is that it is valuable, that it had silver ingrained into it. Our money was sterling, and it was silver, sterling silver.
That's where we get the word fine from.
It's just the word silver missing off the end.
Yes.
But our fine was fine silver.
Fine silver.
But the silver was dropped when the silver ceased to exist
Ceased to exist in the money.
Exactly. But just the monetary system and how we've been defrauded by it is something that most people cannot explain, or they cannot understand if you try and explain it to them, because on the one side, the economists understand that, okay, so maybe we do have a fiat currency system, but just because it's a fiat currency, it doesn't mean that it's actually a bad thing, because we all want money to circulate through the economy, and we realise that we are the money, we're the creation of money. And the reason why we're the creation of money, particularly now, is that we go and promise it. We go to the bank and we promise what we'll do for it.
Yeah.
So we create the money by being the risk takers. In other words, we say, we want something. And this is where we perhaps don't fully understand how we've gone from that time to this time. 80 to 100 years ago, if you wanted something, you had to save yourself. Okay, you actually physically had to save it yourself.
Yep.
Okay, nobody was going to give you it. You had to save yourself for it. And that comes in all levels. That actually makes sense. Whereas now, we don't want to wait.
No.
Now we don't want to wait.
Nope.
Now we want it. So the bank said, okay, that's no problem at all. We'll devise a system where you can have it now and pay later.
Yep.
And we want a cut for taking the risk upon you that you'll give us back what we create for you. So although many people describe the banking system as a complete fraud, it's not really.
Not really,
Not
no.
in the way that they say completely fraudulent. It's not. It's corrupt, but it's not completely fraudulent.
No.
Because we want something, but we want something that we will not wait for.
Yes.
So the bank said, that's no problem at all. We have a system where you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait. You can have it now.
Supply and demand works
And,
lovely.
You know, if it was called the Temptation Bank, you might just figure out how it works. But the final method of control, in fact, the ultimate method of control, is always money. But now it's debt money. Now we're coming to the end of the monetary system. All monetary systems may start off with value in and of itself, and by the end of it, they have no value at all. They turn into a fiat currency, Thanks to Stefan Molyneux, the next quote is that fiat currency's lifespans are about 27 years on average. We're currently in 43 years. So we have a fiat currency that is way, way beyond
its sell-by
expected
date.
lifespan.
Yeah, its expiry date.
But we're also in a Western monetary union now. This is a Western monetary union where if one goes, it generally can take the rest of them with it. And we also have a unique institution called the Bank of England, which can generate. Not all countries have these banks that can do this.
No, they don't.
And that is, they can generate the initial capital that the governments can draw upon. So central banks are primarily designed to control governments and their spending and borrowing, whereas the high street banks are pretty much now designed to control our spending and borrowing. And nobody ever put a gun to your head and sort of made you go to the bank and say, please, may I have?
No.
You did the financial maths at home and decided if you could afford it.
Yeah.
And then you went to the bank and told them whatever it was you thought they needed to see or hear or whatever, and you said, we can afford it. And the bank said, well, looks like you can. So they're not fraudulent in the way that we didn't actually know what they were doing or they hid what they were doing. But prior to 1971, the money did have value. So all the value was stolen out before then.
Yes.
And to give people an example of how inflation and deflation does steal out of our pockets, if we say fish and chips in 1971 was 2 and 6, which is 12.5 pence, 2 and 6 were coins that had silver value in them.
Yep.
Now, it doesn't matter whether fish and chips was 2 and 6 in 1971, because it's just for the example that, let's say they were. That's 12.5 pence. We actually exchanged 2 and 6 for 12.5 pence. The coins that made up 2 and 6 prior to 1971 that we used to use, because of their silver content, today have a street value of over £4. But the 12.5 pence that you exchanged it for is still 12.5 pence. So the coins that you would have given me prior to 71 will still buy, or mostly still buy, fish and chips. Whereas the 12.5 pence, it'll buy a couple of lollies out of the sweet jar at the end of the counter. And that's what we don't understand about inflation, about how fiat currency is the last stop before the end, or the required revolution to bring a new one in. The monetary system is not corrupt. It's just they didn't tell us fraudulent in a way that we can say we're not paying. You know, if it was, I think we'd have had a success story by now.
We would.
We haven't had a success story by now.
No.
We've had some very brave, or crazy, or both people who've challenged it. But the system, whether you're right or wrong, cannot let you win. Because should you win, there's a whole queue of nearly everybody who says, well, I'm going to do that. So
they can't let that precedent be set, can they?
The criminal's justice system is not there to provide justice.
No.
You know, when you go into court, should you be daft enough to realise, technically, by attending, you're guilty.
You've lost,
Okay, technically it's just how much you're going to pay now. The theatre that's played out for you is played out by all people who are members of the same society.
Yep. Same
the only mug and the only person who actually is sworn to tell the truth is you. It's quite ridiculous when you take a step back. But it is what we've got. And I know there are many people on the internet who perhaps can envision another way. And I accept this is part of understanding of what is achievable once you realise what we've got. But it's only achievable in conversation, because we have to actually look closely at who we have to work with. You know, we're not in the majority. Now, I understand the significant minority can control large numbers of people. And the reason why I understand that is because that's what happens now. It is quite a considerable minority that have taken control of what we see and what we hear. And they've told us what to think. And we don't really have any defence against this, because we don't realise what we are and who we are. That mirror tells us just what we want to know. And the one thing that people say, they're looking for the truth, which is a slippery customer and can change daily.
Them terms and conditions change daily.
They do, don't they? But the one thing that I think that perhaps they should be looking at, if you want the truth, start telling it to yourself. Because I've always been sort of a little careful doing these shows, because I always know that if I go too far in saying what's in my head and what the voices say and how I think and my methods of... if I go too far, you fall into the trap that everybody falls into. That is that you're a bit of a nutcase, aren't you? You actually need some help. Do you remember the early days? I think you might need to see somebody. I think, there is people you can talk to, It's not quite normal to think this way. And the many white coats have been planning to take us away for a long time. They've been messing with our minds for as long as we can look back in time. We have people claiming we're brainwashed, our development is arrested, as if it's a new thing. It's not new at all.
Not new, no.
It's not new at all.
No, we're on the 100th anniversary of It's Not New.
No, what is how the last 2,000 years have been, as we negotiate by pubs, or used to, history negotiates by wars.
Yeah.
War there'll always be somebody who isn't happy with what you've got and wants to take it off you.
Yeah.
And that's why the system wants to go to a one world type system, with, of course, the correct names sat at the top, decreeing who gets what and what control, and it's been what they've always wanted to do, but with today's modern technology, which has fooled us into thinking that we're actually more successful now than we've ever been, and yet the houses that I saw in Beamish are not that different from what we have here. The only thing different is technology.
Yeah.
And
coming from a building point of view, though, the housing stock that we have here in the UK is old, it's cold, it's not designed for the lifetime that we live in now. It's not designed for the energy. They're not designed for coal fires to be running 24/7. And from my point of view in the building trade is this housing stock should have been long ago. It should have been levelled, and we should have had new housing stock built a long time ago, because this is not serving us well. It's cost us a fortune to heat, but they're not bothered about that because they know the agenda. We think we know what's happening. We don't. They're hundreds of years in front of us, without a doubt.
The thinking is the actual the stated thinking, and this was from Galton Darwin. The stated thinking is that they think 10 generations ahead, which in numerical numbers is 300, and they talk about where they want to be in 200 or 300 years' time. They don't sit and the fine details are not available to them then, but they set themselves a target.
Yes, the agenda. The
and
agenda
that's where they want to be.
Yes,
and we don't have that luxury, do we?
No,
we're occupied, very busy, paying the bills. I mean,
of course.
Do we live, or do we just pay bills?
We just pay bills.
Do we just pay bills till we die?
Yeah,
because that's sort of when I looked again back to the Coal Museum, and Beamish is much more than that. Let me tell you, the Masonic Hall was great. 2 Masons in there, had a good chat to them. I'll come back to that later. They were lovely. But anyway, in the coal part, the Coal Museum part of the coal mine industry, there was a couple of quotes on there, and it really was. Your job's to produce coal. That's what you're here to produce coal. And it was dark when they went down. It was dark when they came up a bit. And a hell of a life. I mean, I've been before, but I learnt so much more this time round. Second time round, researching, re-looking, returning. The word return and nurture is not quite. It's not quite opposite as you think. Because to nurture is to grow. You've got to return to grow. You've got to go round and round again. It's a yearly cycle that we live in, isn't it? It's not just a yearly cycle. It's a life cycle. But the yearly cycle is to go back and look again. Go back and look again. And what can you learn? History teaches you about the future if you learn history properly.
Making your own compost, isn't it?
It is really. Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. I found it a wonderful day out. The Masonic Hall did have the checkered flooring. It did have the 3 steps at one end. It did have the thrones. It had all the what they wear on the necks, the regalia and everything. Thoroughly enjoyed talking to the guys. These were just 3rd degrees Masons. But I asked one of the chaps, I said, we had a good chat. And I said, will will you show me the handshake? He said, no, I can't.
He'd have to kill you, would he?
He said, I can't. And I said to him,
dear.
I said, look, you guys have had so much bad press over the years. You know, I've read about the bad press you got between the wars. He was talking about the bad press they got in the 80s. I was talking about the bad press they're getting on the internet now, which he was a little bit, he was a bit clueless about that. And I said, you guys are getting blamed for all sorts of stuff that I don't think you're really responsible for.
The Catholics tried to wipe out the Knights Templar. That's how far it goes back.
And he was he said he was a Grand Master, a previous Grand Master. He'd sat in the chair and he'd been the Worshipful Master.
Oh, Worshipful Master.
And both of them were interested because I was being very curious. I wasn't being, I know stuff, but I was asking questions that they were both very happy to talk to me and didn't speak in the way that they wanted to end the conversation. I just asked a few questions and I was there maybe 35, 40 minutes, and it wasn't me doing most of the talking, which was I was a positive.
Yeah.
And they were selling the Masons.
I'm going to say
as a boys' club.
I'm going to say they're on a recruitment drive. Yes.
And it was selling. The chap that I spoke to, I said, when did you join the Masons? 1979. And I said, what were the numbers in the lodge at that time? He said about 150 members. And he said he joined as a junior. He said, and you're is it an early apprentice, something like that? Anyway, it's an apprentice. And
you guard the door at first.
Yeah. And I tell you what he told me before I forget. And I said, was your father a Mason? He said, no, it wasn't. He said, and I said, what's the protocol if your father's a Mason and you join? He said, if your father's a Mason and you join, the actual name for that new member is a Lewis.
Oh, right.
Is a Lewis. And I said, now that's immediately made me go on to Inspector Morse. He said, don't talk to me about Inspector Morse. Oh. I said, well, that seemed very much to me like, the Cambridge, the Oxford, the very, very much, if I had to guess, a Masonic type approach. He looked like he could have been a Mason, and the language and everything. It was very much, why wouldn't the Masons like that? He said that was anti-Freemason. Oh. He said that was anti-Freemason.
Right.
Couldn't get much more out of him on that.
I've never... They never floated my boat, those programmes, so I never watched them.
It was just that he called him they called a Lewis.
Called a Lewis. And there's the Isle of Lewis in Scotland.
I don't know about that.
And Scotland's the main... That's where it really... Its birth was in Scotland, wasn't it?
Okay, I don't know.
Freemasonry it's birthed in Scotland.
Modern day, maybe. You're talking about the Scottish Rite, but it's not... so the Templars didn't the Templars flee France to Scotland in the 13th century?
Well, the French and the Scots
were believe what you like here.
Well in bed together. We were always in bed with the Belgians with the English. Yeah.
Believe what you like in here.
It's whatever they tell you.
Well,
they can... It's whatever fits the bill at that time, doesn't it?
I have a feeling history's been rewritten a number of times.
I'm sure it has.
I'm pretty sure. We only have to look at our own lives and look back at our own lives and... again, look in the mirror and say to yourself, when I recall my youth, have I actually exaggerated it so long that I can't remember what it was really like? Have I actually adapted it and adopted it, and have I actually sort of included other people's did I do that, or did I just think I think? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
When you get older, you think, what is my first memory? Now, I can remember my first memory. It's a red car. It was a red car at Christmas, and as you pedalled it, the lights went on.
Oh, right, yeah.
My mother says that's not possible because I was little, but I remember it. But then you go through those hazy years, and you think, hang on a second, am I mixing my history with somebody else's? And it becomes a little like, I can't remember. Did I say that before? Is that what I said? I can't remember that now. That memory seems to have disappeared. It gets a bit messy, doesn't it?
Frayed at the edges.
I think it does, yeah. Right. Anyway, let's leave that and move along then. So we've had the successful hosting well in Scotland for the Commonwealth Games.
We have
a jolly good show. Really didn't watch too much of it.
No, I didn't watch
any
of it.
We've got a local guy here from Ripon. We've got 2 golds in the diving.
All right. Very good.
Representing the Harrogate Swimming Club, but he's actually from Ripon.
Yeah.
I don't know him actually. He's not been in here. So
no, I didn't know anything about it.
The girls say they know who he is. So congratulations to him.
Yes.
I always watch the Commonwealth. Well, I always see the Commonwealth Games or the Olympics as very much the allegories of life, aren't they? With the tracks and the tests and the trials, the relays and the jumps and the fences and the fencing and the shooting, and the riding and the cycling and the swimming and it's all ingrained into our lives, isn't it? To be the fittest.
Yep.
Now I know that our broadcasts here we do for ourselves, because this is how we learn so much of what we are comfortable seeing. And what we actually do is we discuss what we see, not what others tell us to see, and not what others report they've seen. We actually only ever talk about what we've seen. And I found that to be a source of never-ending curiosity for me. And the more you learn, the more you want to learn. It is a never-ending school lesson. Like fish, we never do actually leave school.
No, we don't.
But we're only fish on one level, and that's if you don't know that you should be captain by now. You should have become captain.
You should.
Now, how to become captain is a little more difficult, because you can be crew, but crew's not captain.
No,
you can be the lookout, but you're still not captain.
No,
it's getting to be captain. You start off as the fish, but you've got to get in that sea, or you've got to get in that boat, and then you've got to take it over.
Yeah.
It's an interesting allegory of life that we live in, and it's been one that's been going for a long time. It isn't just unique to this time. The water allegory has been around for a long time.
This is why we bow to our superiors.
Well, that's why rain bows.
Yes.
A rain bow is we bow to the rain. All colours of the spectrum are displayed. This is the rain bow over the earth, or the bow, if you want, with a bow and arrow. I mean, it's all connected together in a control system that's been around a long time.
Yep.
And I know people, boys and girls, who we used to associate with, but we don't so much now, because we find that they're stuck. They're still amazed.
Yes.
And they won't get out of the amazed.
No,
and they keep going back to be more amazed tomorrow.
Looking for a saviour and a solution.
They talk about fate and destiny. Well, fate is something that you go to, to be sort of be entertained, isn't it? A fate is something that is all dancing and singing and all fun, and everybody's there and you're having a great time.
Yeah.
But it's not your fate. It's just that you took yourself there hoping for something to happen. A bit like going to a nightclub, isn't it? A nightclub's fate. Why do you go to a nightclub? Well, you go see if somebody wants to sleep with you.
Yeah,
that's the base. In today's modern world, it's just, can you find somebody who's going to have sex with you? That's what nightclubs are. And if somebody says no, they aren't, I'll say, well, I'm going to ask you how much time you spent in nightclubs, and then I'm going to say it's going to have to be considerably longer than me, because I've been in them a long time. I was 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. I've been the only sober person in the nightclub, and believe me, I can tell you what nightclubs are at that time of morning, and there are nothing else. Have we always been animals?
I think so. We've been so domesticated now that
because our classification is animals, but it's survival of the fittest, according to Mr. Darwin. Now, most people say that's just a theory. I don't really think it's a theory myself at all. I think it's observation.
Observation, yeah.
It's observation in the animal kingdom. That's what happens. Now, what do? We actually, I'm saying we as if it's you and I, but no, always collectives. We actually try and get all to survive.
Yeah.
The disabled, the handicapped, the ill. The euthanasia crowd again, we don't talk about the negative side as much as perhaps other people do, because the negative side is how they bring it in. That's how they get it in. The minority control the majority is through us talking about their dark ideas. But we can't sit here today and think that we're the best version of mankind that's ever existed, because that doesn't appear to be true in history, does it? My visit just yesterday confirmed that we wouldn't do that now.
No,
we wouldn't live like this now. We've had a taste of this. We would never go back to that. So, I see lots of postings on Facebook about grow your own food, how to make a lamp in a bean can, and that sort of thing. Yeah, these are all ideas that people may want to use when they're out camping and such. But we don't want to live in a tent, do we?
No,
we don't really.
No, we don't want to be camping in the house.
We really want to. Should we choose to focus on why we can't afford to live now?
Yeah.
The Commonwealth Games, as I say, is the reason why we support these things so well is because they are the fittest.
They are the fittest.
They are the fittest.
Or they purport to be the fittest. I was just listening to Radio 4 again this week, and they were interviewing 4 or 5 Commonwealth athletes, all of them had eating disorders. Every one of them. And they were admitting it. It's part of their regime to become the best, the fittest, the fastest, the sleekest. The correlation between fitness and diet has gone so far that they end up bulimic. That they binge, they eat, and then they gorge themselves.
It's quite sad, isn't it?
It is sad.
Here we are. How to win?
How to win is to be get yourself a eating disorder.
Do we get from that win at all costs?
Win at all costs, yeah.
It's who dares wins.
It is who dares wins, yeah. And the support that you need to go with it, because it's not just the person, it's the sponsors. The sponsorships pushing this. It ain't about the Commonwealth Games.
It's always about money.
It's about the money.
It's about... Well, we talked about the Tour de France, didn't we? About that's a business.
Yeah.
FIFA, who's in the news, Gary Lineker's criticising FIFA, and Sepp Blatter, the dictator he claims he is. Mm-hmm. It's about money. Mm-hmm. Everything that can be monetised is going to be monetised.
Yeah.
And we're monetising the air we breathe. Mm-hmm. Next, it's going to be... It already is water, but next it's going to be monetised for everybody into allowances. Allowances is what slaves get. Mm-hmm. We don't support this system that we actually are happy with any of it.
No.
But we talk about what we see.
Yeah.
To go any further for us, I think, is to wander into it's been done by everybody else. Mm-hmm. And it's not what we do, is it?
No.
Our shows are for us. And if you choose to listen on YouTube, thanks very much. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't matter to us.
No.
Now, if I was challenged, well, what do you put them on YouTube for then? I'd say it's to see what people think.
Yeah, see what people think.
But it's not for validation.
No.
I'm not looking for a pat on the head. This isn't for validation. This isn't Paul, you're right. Because today, sat down talking, we compliment each other. But this is what we see today.
Yeah.
If you go back 2 years ago when we first started, the shows sound similar. But things have changed since then.
They have, yeah.
And what's changed is
us.
It's our understanding of the people around us, isn't it?
I've changed I would have said, on a weekly basis. I change my mind on a weekly basis.
Is this but is this the method of control?
Yes, it is.
Of course it is, isn't
it? Of course, yeah.
You've got nothing to hold on to.
No
stability.
No stability whatsoever.
You get blown about in the winds.
You do, yeah.
You know, we really are we just rudders? Mm-hmm. Rudders without a ship? Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how it all works. It is the cleverer people than us working at the system.
Blow by blow.
This is why we have the universities. It's all down to the universities, and that's why they want people to think that they go to university. I've been to the University of Life, and I've been happy with that. It's so far stood me in good stead. I can't complain. I really cannot complain. And that's because of the effort that I've put in. Nobody else has done it, just me. I've made a lot of mistakes, I'll admit that. And I'm trying to put an end to those mistakes. But just the Commonwealth Games, just what we were saying, listen to the Commonwealth.
Where is it?
Yeah, what happened? Where did we get it from?
Where's the money?
And
Where's the bloody money?
Where's the money? And it's mainly around mining. The Queen there opened the games. I didn't see it, but one of my pals said, "Did you see the Rolls Royce she was in? It were wobbling about all over." And he's a mechanic, and he said to me, he said, "I don't know what's wrong with that Rolls Royce, but there was definitely something wrong with it. It were wobbling about. He were laughing his socks off." And he's in a similar mind to us. His way of thinking, but the Commonwealth Games, and look at the Commonwealth, the deaths that have gone on in this 100th year anniversary. And they were asking for people to ring in today with relatives' thoughts, and people were saying, "Oh, if my granddad hadn't have died in First World War, I wouldn't have been here." And I was trying to get my head round that one. I really was. But I had my great granddad served in the First World War, and he survived it. And I wasn't old enough. I love times that you think you'd love to go back and speak to relatives, and I'm looking forward to it. If in the afterlife, if there is an afterlife, and I meet my great granddad, my granddad Ellsworth. That's what I'm going to ask him. What were your experience? What did you go through? And I hope I get to have that conversation with him. And as they were talking about this war, saying it's given us what we've all got today. Yeah, look at what we've got today. It was just another step of slavery, and
war is just consolidating power.
It's absolutely,
it's all about power. This
it's about culling the numbers. Us stupid idiots that go and fight these wars for the royalty, and the royalty we've had Prince Charles out spouting, we've had David Cameron out spouting, we've had Prince William and his wife spouting off, and it was two cousins. It was the Kaiser Bill, and it was King George, and they were cousins. And if they had have had any grain of dignity between them, they would have gone to a duel. They would have sorted it out with a duel. They were supposedly into all the sports and everything out there. Would they have gone and gone fencing or had a duel in the grounds? That's what should have happened. Not our parents and grandparents going to be slaughtered on battlefields.
I think we might find that the stock exchanges, these are the people who finance wars.
It certainly is. What annoyed me as well, I was listening to it and I was shouting
Even
at the radio.
The BBC this morning showed a newspaper article about the stock exchanges and how excited they were about war.
Making money on it.
Yeah.
And the companies that are still around today.
The BBC showed that this morning.
Yeah. Unilever is still around today. World War I, World War II. They're there for World War III. They're going to be there for World War IV. If there's anything with Unilever on it, I don't buy it. I don't buy anything from them. Procter and Gamble's another one. These are big companies that lobby Parliament and get what they want. And that's how I vote with my money. I look very carefully where I'm spending my money nowadays.
Are we any different to what we were 2,000 years ago?
I don't think we are, really.
The Bible tells us that we're not, doesn't it?
No, we're not.
The Bible tells us that we're a bunch of double-dealing fibbers.
Yeah.
That we say one thing, do another. We're double-crossers.
Yeah.
The Bible tells us that we'll do anything for a quick buck, and we'll go behind people's back, we deceive, we're corrupt, and we're fraudulent.
Yeah.
And God is a man of war, and he's a man of war of God, you know?
Yeah.
He's a man at war with God. Anything changed? It's rubbish. It's exactly what we're doing now, isn't it? It's exactly the conversations we have now. Nothing has changed.
No.
So what's with the brainwashing? How come we've been... No, we haven't been brainwashed, have we? No, we haven't been brainwashed.
No.
We're just too stupid to think for our bloody selves.
Think for ourselves. They were spouting figures off left, right and centre. 30,000 went here and 16,000 lost that. I can't remember what the figures were, but... on the battlefields, and I was shouting at the radio again, let's have that figure of how many you executed for desertion. Where's that figure?
Shot with a turn round. Shot with a turn round, yeah.
And where's all the figures for them all in the mental homes with shell shock? Where's those figures? Where are the figures for the doctors and the nurses that were looking after those that had arms and legs blown off? And what about the cost to the nation of those? We've even got now bloody help for heroes. Simon Cowell sticking his head behind it. And that's because we talk about a welfare state and this, that and the other. And we can't even look after... We have to have charity to look after the so-called heroes that come back. They're not... Well, I just get really annoyed with it. I really do.
I don't blame you. I mean, our soldiers have been short of stuff all the time. I mean, I have a delivery guy comes to me. He's relatively new, just started for the company a couple of weeks ago, but he chatted to me last week. And I said, oh, you're a new face. I said, how long have you been with him? He said, a week or whatever. And I said, how long have you been out of the army? And he said, how do you know? I said, you can sort of tell. You can sort of tell, you know, you just can tell. I said, and the biggest giveaway is that you never say pardon or excuse me or sorry. You always say again. But just say again. And you think, it's a bloody order. Say again. You know, I said, how long have you been out of the army? He said, just a few months. I said, did you actually see bullets? Did you see bullets and bombs? Did you actually get to be, you know, part of, you know, the war itself? And did you shoot people? And did you see attacks? He said, no, we spent 14 months in the tent playing FIFA football. Said, never once did they see anybody. That's what he said. 14 months in the tents playing World Cup FIFA football on a 50-inch TV screen. That's what he said.
Wow.
That was his words. 14 months, he said.
Well,
and I said to him, how much of it is real? He said, from what I saw, none of it.
Right.
That's what he said.
Well, going back to the 100 years anniversary, it started in around Yugoslavia, Bosnia and all that. Franz Ferdinand was the president of Serbia, I think he was, and he was assassinated, and the Austrians got kicked, and that's where it kicked off. One of my friends, he won't mind me mentioning, Robbie, he was in the army when Serbia kicked off last time, Yugoslavia. It all split up, the Serbs and the Croats and all that. They were killing each other. And he went to serve out there, part of the UN. The UN got involved, and I asked him, I said, while we're working together, I said, have you actually shot people then? What, you know?
That's what I asked people. They're quite shocked when you ask them.
They are, yeah. And he says, I've fired a gun, but I said, I don't know if I shot anybody. I said, you what? He says, we fired guns, but we don't know if we shot anybody. I says, can you elaborate on it? I'm really interested. I'm not been there. I don't know. You're talking to a layman. What happened? He says, we got into a firefight. We didn't know whether it was Serbs, Croats, or who it was with, but we were in our foxhole. We've been told to hold a position and monitor it, and we came under fire. And he says, all you did was you held your gun above your head, out the foxhole, and fired. And you fired in the direction where the bullets were coming from. So I said, so you don't even know if you... He says, no, all we did was we gave the coordinates and I called for an airstrike. And he says, after the airstrike had gone, then we went out on patrol. And I says, did you get them? He says, oh yeah, we got them. There were body parts all over. But he didn't... To this day, he didn't know who they were, who he was firing at, or anything.
That time's coming to an end now, isn't it? Because today's modern military is preparing for the times when we say, enough's enough. Mm-hmm. You know, the actual video games that the kids have been playing for the past 20, 30 years are going to become a reality, aren't they?
Yeah. They're droning on.
And if we look at the video games that we were looking at, I mean, they were always alien stuff, weren't they? Mm-hmm. And then it moved into much more the warfare stuff, the military stuff. Yeah. And that's starting to become, you know, that's becoming very close to reality now. This is how do we have any power to stop that? How do we influence those decisions?
We don't.
How
simple
whatever we say cannot change that they now have electronic warfare that they can use to basically subjugate anybody individually.
Unless it's under the agenda that we're under, which is Libya's in turmoil, Syria's in turmoil, Israel and Gaza has always been in turmoil because we started that off. that came out of war again.
But we're being guilted into thinking that it's somehow our fault.
It's our problem, yeah.
I mean,
it's our fault.
I was on a thread the other day on Facebook, and I read the whole thread, and it was all about obviously Gaza and Palestine, because Gaza's just a small part of Palestine. And it was all about that, and very many, loads of people had a point of view about what should be done. And I put up, email your MP. I put up the actual site where you can just email your MP.
Yeah.
And out of all the maybe 100 and so comments or whatever, nothing at all.
Nothing
at all, because we're professional commentators. We're actually watchers.
Yeah.
And we don't admit that, do we?
No.
We don't admit that we are watchers.
That's all I can do is watch and listen.
Well, what we're doing now is we're watching and professionally commentating.
Yeah.
But at least we are part of the new age of we're prepared to speak out.
Yeah.
The people around us are not.
No.
And slowly but surely, albeit a little bit late, we're trying to come up with a method and a narrative that engages people at the unconscious level, which is what they're at.
Yeah.
I mean, some people consciously know what's going on, and they're okay with it. And we're not okay with it.
No.
But it's pointless just saying that. We have to discuss what we've got, and the problem is not enough people will be true to themselves.
No.
Now, the truth of movement, which I hate that word, of the alternative gang, in the early part of the discoveries of this stuff, they do more damage than good. And I can speak for myself, and you've agreed with me on this, haven't you? We do a lot more damage than we do good in the early part, because we learn things and we think, people need to know this stuff. But we've not practiced how to talk to people, have we?
No.
we don't understand how to relay this stuff. So the baton never gets passed, does it?
No.
Because they think we're nuts.
Mm-hmm.
After 2 or 3 or 4 years, you start to realise it doesn't work. That it doesn't make you popular. It depresses you. It causes a little bit more paranoia than you ever thought was existed, and it doesn't work. And then a lot of people walk away from it. A lot of people just leave this and just say, "Look, I'm just going to get on with life."
Mm-hmm.
Can you blame them?
No.
No, I can't either.
I can't.
But we didn't choose to do that.
No.
We've been accused of it just yesterday, of apathy and decadent and can't be bothered. But
I wouldn't agree with that.
But we've been accused of it. It's okay. We've been accused of more than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm not bothered about that. That doesn't matter
no,
at all.
accuse away.
We got a share
away.
out of it, so that's all right.
Yeah.
Share the shows, crack on. But what is there to do apart from? We can't call this art, but we are creating.
Mm-hmm.
We're creating something that didn't exist before we made it.
Yeah.
Now, does it have information in that is new and vital and enlightening and empowering? I don't really think so.
No.
But it's making us different.
It is.
2 guys in Yorkshire
Sharing.
who are far too old to really learn new stuff easily, but we're still doing our best every week.
Do you know what pleased me this week? Last week. I've had my great-granddad fought in the... He actually told lies on his age, and he fought in the Boer War.
Yep.
He grew up with Churchill, and came back from that, and then fought in the First World War. Sergeant Major, went way up the ranks. He taught unarmed combat, which we now know is called judo. And I've got pictures of him with his handlebar moustache, and in his all white gear. And he was with the Yorkshire Rifles down in Leeds, Barrack Road. And then my granddad went and fought in the Second World War. Would I go to war? And I approached the subject with my son, and I said, "Will you go to war, Lewis, if you're asked to go to war?" And he said, "No, I won't." I said, "Good for you, Lewis." And I said, "What would you do if they're going to? What would you say to them if they're going to put you in prison?" He says, "Put me in prison because I ain't going to fight your wars for you." And I said, "Well done," because that's what I would say now. That's just what I would say. I would say, "No, I ain't going to fight your wars. You go fight them. I'm staying here. This is where I live. This is where I was born. I'm staying here. You go fight your own wars."
Those that want a war should have it.
Yes.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
If you want a war, have one.
You go have one.
Go have one.
Carry on. Go on. All the gear's there.
But we've got mothers who send their children to die. And they're proud to do so.
Yes. Yeah, that's...
It's a strange phenomenon, isn't it?
It was the done duty to sign up.
But you have to believe you've been attacked by an outside force.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, your country needs you. All the propaganda posters.
But the truth is, war controls the world.
Yeah, it
war
does.
is the economy.
Yeah,
war is the power.
Yeah.
War is the force. Mm-hmm. And on our own little lives, we use the same methodology to control our world. Mm-hmm. But most people won't agree with that either.
No, and the royalty love it, don't they? They've got every fancy dress uniform in the Mr. Ben shop, haven't they? He's got a Paris uniform as Prince Charles. We saw Prince William get married in full military regalia. It looked like something out of a Disney.
Well, Disney portrayed the wedding before then.
Yeah,
they wore exactly the same things. The prince and princess wore exactly the same.
The blue trousers and the red stripe down the side. Never. The only royal that's gone to
costume dramas.
Harry's gone to war, hasn't he?
We love costume dramas.
Killed a few Muslims in Afghanistan. He did. I don't know. It's just, and then comes back here to a multicultural society, goes round opening places.
But you can see this for what it is now. I mean, most people can't see it for what it is. They don't see it properly.
No,
they don't see it properly. No. Even a lot of people we speak to don't see the simplicity of it all.
The red carpet.
Life is complex. There's no doubt about it.
Carpet.
It is so complex that it cannot be described other than the simple ways that we describe it. And you add your own bits to it because everybody's different.
Yeah,
But the basic programming that we can freely read about in the Bible, supposedly from 2,000 years ago, has it changed? No. It hasn't changed at all, has it?
No.
We're the same nasty little vermin.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to be.
Mm-hmm.
We can be angels and devils.
We can.
And the book writes about the both sides. See both sides. That's what we are.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to fight. You have to fight the darker side. And people say, but you're so negative, you're so pessimistic, you're so down. Has looking at the darker side of life made you feel stronger?
Yes.
Has it empowered you to challenge things you wouldn't challenge?
Yeah, look at things in a different way.
Has it
look at it from their point of view.
But those people who you felt knew more than you, now are you fearless in challenging them?
No, not. I've got no qualms at taking anybody on.
Is there a guy in the world that you'd be frightened to speak to?
No.
There isn't me either.
No.
Not at all. I mean, I don't claim equality, but why wouldn't they answer my questions?
Mm-hmm. And I've had instances where people clam up. They don't want to answer your questions.
Well, back to the Masons yesterday. They were great to talk to, but if I asked the wrong questions, they clammed up. If I asked the right questions, they gave me what I wanted.
Yeah.
Because they wanted me to be like them. Mm-hmm. They wanted me to join them.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that what we all do? You know, if we look at the very smallest parasite, so the biggest organism, whatever, us, if you say, what is that parasite's organism's number one priority? Survival. Mm-hmm. Second priority is to reproduce itself.
Yeah.
And on the smallest level, we do that in a petri dish, and it's called a culture. Mm-hmm. A culture dish.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody, every single, from the smallest to the biggest, it's only interested in survival, reproduction.
Yeah.
And the reason why it survives and reproduces, not only to make a copy of itself, but it wants to control the environment around it. Mm-hmm. Well, are we not all trying to make people like us?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean people who do like us. We're trying to make people like us, aren't we? Mm-hmm. We're trying to say, you're right, you know. I'm going to come and sit on your team because you're right. But we haven't got the enticement, have we?
No.
You see, learning this stuff does not guarantee you any financial reward.
No.
In fact, it can often be the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Those who take on the court system, brave or crazy, you decide, they usually have to spend to try and save themselves. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what the court system's designed to do. You pay their wages. Mm-hmm. It's easy to see if you want to see it, and oblivious if you don't. Mm-hmm. If you want to split a region up, put a lie in it.
Yeah.
What do we get?
Religion.
If you don't want something to be obvious, put a lie in it. What do you get?
Oblivious.
I wish I could somehow transmit how naive we are. Mm. You know, last week in the shop I was having some fun in the shop. I always do this, a bit of research for fun. And I was saying to folks, do you know, I didn't realise that the word gullible actually isn't in the dictionary. That was last week's bit of fun that I was having. We fall for we can fall for anything because we don't believe in anything. Yeah. And what we don't believe in, we don't believe in ourselves. Men have forgotten to be men, and women are too busy competing and challenging and trying to be men. Mm. It isn't that difficult to understand why our relationships, our family situations, and the very basis of what we call life as we know it is changing, because it's been changed. But the one thing that's been changed, the major factor why and how it's been changed, is survival. And we're interested in survival of the tribe, but when it comes down to it, we're interested in survival for ourselves first. Mm-hmm. And as we get an ever-reducing and harder to accumulate and save commodity, which allows us to live, which is the water or the money that we're actually all chasing for, as that commodity becomes harder and harder to acquire and store, we're going to care less and less and less about what others have, and more that we have what we need.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we're in the age of decay. This is the age of decay. Looking at Beamish and reading about empire and history, the wars and the country's wars, this is very much a sign of when the decay started.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the sign of wars are started to solve all sorts of cultural and financial problems.
Mm-hmm.
But once you realise that it's
the cost is not just.
It's just always about the money.
It is. I'm going to say it's not just about human lives.
It's about enslaving governments.
It's about enslaving us. Yeah.
It's about enslaving governments who in turn enslave their people to pay the bills.
We're still paying for those wars that were fought in the Queen's name, the King and Queen's name.
I think didn't we just somehow? We've just finished the bill on World War One, have we? Just recently.
Have we?
But it doesn't matter.
But
what I'm saying is that people need to understand that the wars to enslave the governments who enslave the people, and the people enslave the children by allowing these things to happen.
Yeah. Mm.
It's not new. It's just new to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The understanding isn't secret or hidden.
No.
It's just that when we leave school, we think that's all the schooling we need.
Mm-hmm.
When we leave school at 16, 17, 18, whenever you did or I did, it doesn't matter. Should you be 40, should you be 45? And I've done this to a couple of people, but I won't do it again because it embarrasses them. And I've said, between leaving school and the age that you've got to now, what have you learned new? What have you learned of importance? What new skill do you have that you didn't have at 18? This doesn't go well because most people realise that they've added nothing. They've added nothing to the skill set, especially if they work for the control system. Alright, on we go. It is no, it's not Tuesday.
No.
It's Monday, the 4th of August 2014. We're early because I'm busy tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm.
Busy doing something else. Now, we were just chatting there because we had a little bit of a break there, and there's a couple of notes that you've made that you wanted to go back to.
I just wanted to go back to
there's some things about war that people don't cover properly, and we don't ask people to study history like perhaps you're almost persuaded to on here.
Mm-hmm.
In the early days, we felt we had to remember the dates, the times, the numbers, all the names, and it was really hard, wasn't it? Because we were asking our memories to do something they've never done before.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is remember the fine details.
Yeah.
Where actually, all you really need is the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Read everything, but don't try and remember everything. But be aware of where you read it. Don't throw it away.
No.
Download it, put it onto a hard drive, an external hard drive. Keep everything, because it is so valuable to look back on a year or 2 or 3 down the line. You can understand your train of thought, you can understand how you thought, and you can also see how you were being led. Remember that it only becomes reality for you when you can speak it back out again. Cement is how you build, and that's how this works on every level that you want to name here.
Yeah.
If you see it and say it, and it makes sense and it fits in with what you're doing, you're building.
See it and meant it.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you're building then. The cement is what's holding it together.
Yeah.
Because you're building level upon level upon level. That's why it's all called stories.
Yeah.
But you've got to make sure that you are developing your own story. Now, it might be very, very different to somebody else's. It doesn't mean they're wrong, but it doesn't mean that they're right either. But they're building their own building. They're making their own house that they live in. And that house that they live in is in their heads. They're building somewhere that they want to feel safe in. And you're doing the same thing. So let them build. That's why everybody individually builds. That's why the buildings, the Brussels building, it's not finished.
No.
We're all building an inner sanctuary. We're all building somewhere to feel safe. And as you said, you keep changing your materials, you keep changing your method. You're not quite ready to put your foundations down.
No.
But you're trying to. And that's where we get the build it up, knock it down mentality of what we call our Western civilizations. We build them up and knock them down, because that's what we're doing in our own heads.
Yeah.
We build people up, but we don't want to see them get past us, because this is a race. And we don't want them to overtake us. We want them to, at best, be just behind us. You know, this world really, on our level, is, if we can't all be rich, then let's be equally poor.
Let's be equally poor, yeah.
and you know, we have to admit in our heads that we want people to get on, but do we want them to get on better than we're doing? Well, it changes once you look at the other side of the mirror, doesn't it? Once you look at the other side, I mean, I remember in business, I've got a fish and chip shop here, I wanted to annihilate the rest of the chip shops. I would have been delighted if I'd closed them all down and was the only one left. And I realised that thinking is just a very small mirror of what's going on in the bigger business world. Now my thinking has completely changed. Now I want all the chip shops to be busy.
Yeah.
I want them all to be so darn busy that fish and chips is popular. So I want my customers to roll up in new cars with the nicest clothes on, with an expensive suntan, and happy, smiley faces, because life is good for them. And I know when life is good for them, they will share a little bit of their fortune with me, and my life will become more fortunate. And that's the difference between who I used to be many years ago to who I see and think and how I am today. And these are things that we forget. These are things that we don't understand, because the very resource that we need to survive is in shorter and shorter and shorter supply. And we're having to give so much up to get it.
Yeah.
Wars, we're still in one.
We are.
This is an extension of the Second World War, or is it the conversion now into a Third World War? Was September the 11th, 2001 the start of the war on Western civilization? I think it's possible that should somebody say that's the day it started, I'll say, tell me why, because I think I might agree with you. War's a terrible thing. But
it is.
But we need to know about it, because that's all we live in.
And what you were saying there about destroy the competition, that's just how politicians think.
Yep.
That is just how politicians think. And knock them down and build them up. They know they've got to knock...
But they build them up to knock them
they
down.
build them up to knock them down, exactly.
They build them up, change the rules,
yes,
pull the foundations away, pull the rug away, and it all falls down.
Compromise them a little bit, and then watch them wriggle out of it.
But not governments do that. It's more big business that run government now.
Lobbying.
Businesses are bigger than governments.
That's one of the things I'd do if I were Prime Minister tomorrow. I'd stop the lobbying.
But that's
more lobbying.
But that's the new economy.
Gone.
Lobbying is the new... We call it... It's called lobbying. So it doesn't sound very dangerous.
No, it doesn't sound like...
What we really need to say
bribery.
It's actually a method of control that primarily uses compromise and blackmail. That's what lobbying is.
Yeah.
It's compromised and blackmailable. Yeah. That's why we have so many deviants sat in positions of power. Because that's why they're there.
Yeah.
It's hard for us to think, this sounds like a James Bond film. It sounds like all the sort of detective series that I've ever seen. Because reality is coming closer and closer and closer. Your television has been telling you a vision for a long time, but the pretend is going to disappear. The pretend is going to become real. The two are going to merge together in a singularity, and you will do as you're told or you'll starve.
Yeah.
The ultimate war, the final revolution. In the Second World War, over 100 countries took part in that. That was the World War. The First World War is now known as, is it the Great War?
It was called the Great War, yeah.
The second one was the World War. Over 100 countries participated in that. And we have the unforgettable voice of Mr. Churchill.
We do. I did a little bit of research on Churchill. It was my great-granddad's era. And he fought in the Boer War with me. He was a lieutenant in the Boer War. He actually went to war and fought in the war.
This is Winston Churchill.
Winston Churchill.
One of the very last leaders to do that.
I've got a picture of him in a book.
Is he the last leader to do that, to go to war?
Yes, he is.
Yes.
Now, he cut his teeth. He was Sandhurst. He was bullied by his father. His father didn't like him at all. He was always trying to do good and get favour in his father's eyes, and his father knocked him down at everything that he could. He would knock the legs from underneath him, and that was his father's way of strengthening him, make him come back and have another go at me. And each time he'd knock him down, and it did make him a strong man. Now, he was a strategist in World War One, and he was deeply involved in that in World War One, and that's why he was the perfect. Was he elected to Prime Minister? We don't know. We've talked about this before. Who counts the votes? All we know, it's done in secret, and that all the ballot papers are burnt, so you can't go back and check. But his teeth were cut, and then he in World War II. Now then, look at the prime ministers after that. None of them have gone to war.
But they've all wanted
they've
one.
all wanted
for
one.
a page in history for them.
Look at I'm thinking of the last Conservative. He had a fling with
Mr. Grey.
John Major.
Yeah, so Mr. Grey.
Mr. Grey with his grey hair. John Major in bed with George Bush Senior, and we went into when Kuwait Iraq supposedly invaded Kuwait.
Figuratively speaking.
Yeah.
Because John, wasn't having a mess with what's her name? Mrs. Salmonella.
Mrs. Salmonella, yes.
I can't remember.
Edwina.
But didn't you feel like saying, "Well done"? Well, I didn't think you had that
it in him.
Well, the thing about you think, how could he? It's strange, isn't it? But
was it on the tea trolley as well?
You just look at that and you think, well, he looked a very weak man to me. And a very weak man, we call him impotent, which is powerless. And impotence is somewhere you can't raise your game when you need to. And that especially is what happens in powerful women.
Yeah.
Impotent men cannot have sexual relations with powerful women because they're powerless. So you can't raise your game to do the business.
No. That which reminds me, we had a West Indian doctor now, when he said, "You're impotent." And I came out of there thinking I were really, really important. But anyway,
where do you get that one from?
Churchill. He was the last prime minister, I believe, to actually fought in a war. Look at all the ones after that: weak, limp, all smiles, and it's all image after that. And if you turned up in a room and with a gun and went bang, you know they'd mess the pants. Blair and Cameron and all these
the little boys out there.
And
as you and I become older than they are, we see them for what they are.
Yeah.
These people are not different and special.
No.
Okay, they just think they are because they've been told they are their entire lives.
Yes,
their entire lives they've been the tools, but they're grown for purpose.
They are.
I've said before, these people are grown for purpose. In fact, I would say this is what the rich and entitled do with their useless children.
They do. Look at. Well, we've talked about it. I'm going to predict the future here. Boris Johnson is going to become the next Prime Minister for the Conservatives. When that'll be, I don't know. But you can see the priming him for it. And if you...
Is there a film comes to mind?
Yes, there is. Idiocracy. If you get a chance to watch that film, watch Idiocracy.
It is.
That is really good. And
it's uncomfortable.
That fits with the agenda. Yes.
But how far away are we?
When...
Apart from the flying cars, apart from the flying cars, how far away are we?
Not very far.
We're pretty much there.
Pretty much there. Yeah.
We talk about the dumbing down of society, and we don't see it.
No.
You see, we don't even understand what dumbing down is. Dumbing down is, we think it's to make stupid, but it's not. Dumbing down is to make it so we can't communicate effectively. If you're dumb, you can't talk, and we're slowly but surely replacing typing for talking, aren't we? The kids of the generation, the typing and talking are now becoming merged together.
Yeah.
And for reasons that I'm not quite sure, we prefer to type than we do to take a call. Interesting. How do we get to that? Is it because we don't like confrontation? Is it because we really are children?
Yeah.
Are we really children? Have we lowered ourselves to children? Have we got to the point now where we can't feed ourselves? Because if we can't read very well, and if we don't write, therefore we can't spell, and if we don't write and never learn to spell, our reading age will reduce and reduce and reduce, so we can only read what we're able to actually understand. And we can't do maths. We're going to need comic-type book stories to actually relay the news to us.
Mm.
How much longer do you think?
We're nearly there now, aren't we?
We've been taken back to the start, aren't we? We're going back to the start, weak and helpless, because we're going to be remade in a new image. And it doesn't happen in a year or two. It happens over perhaps 3 or 4 generations when the biggest changes take place. And we're in the second generation of the change, I think. If we sort of put a calendar day of the end of the Second World War, and we look at the strength, the physical strength, and the mental strength of the people who got through that, because we certainly can't cope with that now. I mean, I believe today's modern warfare in the Western world, suicide is actually killing more soldiers than actual active duty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we realise that our mental strength is been changed, rightly or wrongly, and I'm not here to have a discussion about it. In the Second World War, those men, rightly or wrongly, did do what they had to do.
Mm-hmm.
They dug trenches, sailed ships, flew planes, and did everything that was needed to do to defend from the National Socialists of Germany and combined forces of Europe.
Yeah.
And that's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter whether if you say they were wrong to do that, then please don't say it to me, because they were prepared to risk your life.
They were
risking their lives to do that for their wives and their children. And perhaps that's the last time that we can look back at what we call our culture and our heritage, and see mum and dad as a family unit, see the nucleus of a family, the very essence of creation, how life is propagated, how we got here, the union of the male and the female, the creation of life, the male being the captain, the female being the captain's mate. But she was the ship. Yeah. She was the captain's mate. The captain can't sail until he has a ship. You know, and the seamen are all part of the creation of life itself. And
involved in that, look at how they spin things. We're only allowed in this culture that we live in now. We are only allowed to defend ourselves, aren't we?
Well, are we allowed to defend ourselves? Because if somebody comes in my house with a gun,
a bit of a
and
grey
I smack
area.
him over the head with a bloody sledgehammer, okay, we can find in the news that I can be guilty.
You can, because you've got to prove that you were defending yourself.
I realise.
And you've got to,
we can't even walk out the house with a penknife in our pockets.
No, this is defeated. We're on our knees.
We've been defeated.
We have.
Knocked over.
We have, yeah.
This is checkmate.
We're on our knees. We're on our knees praying.
We're
king.
We're king.
Yes.
Defeated. They've knocked the king over.
They have.
The sovereignty is gone. The people who describe these words in the legal system, the lawful system, they're not wrong. They have knocked us over. We were king, but now they're W-E-R-E. We were king. Or is it W-H-I-R king? It's the same thing. It depends what decode you want to give on that. It's the correct decode, whichever version you want to go through. There isn't one right way of saying all this.
Well, we have Ministry of Defence, but all we do is attack.
Ministry of Attack.
Yes.
Exactly.
In the
world of common law, he who attacks, is the aggressor.
The aggressor,
They're the one in the wrong.
But
not now.
No.
The words, the language, the spinners.
Has got you.
They're so clever.
Hook, line and sinker, yeah.
By hook or by crook, by addiction or deception. We've been fooled, and the hardest thing in the world is to actually get people to accept that they have been fooled.
Yeah.
I look at the paedophilia and the homosexual agendas that are now very much front and centre. These are an attack. They're an attack on what we call family life and community.
Yeah, and been working on them since the 60s and 70s.
A long time before then, really.
Yeah.
A long time before then. As I said a little while ago, every parasite wants to make more of itself so it can make its culture around like. And that's what everybody does. And those that say that they don't do that, you decide. It's time that you actually thought for yourself, because that's what really happens here. A thief associates with thieves, and like-minded look for like-minded, and that's why they find each other. That's why the groups, the minorities that control, and they're all minorities, all these deviants have found people like themselves. Homosexuality was the way, but now it seems to be paedophilia is what's taking centre stage.
Yeah.
Now, why are our babies given hepatitis B injections? Why are they given Hep B vaccinations? Well, Hep B is a venereal disease. It's a vaccine against venereal disease for babies. Huh?
I know.
But we don't ask these questions, do we?
We don't know.
Why would you give a newborn baby Hep B when it's a venereal disease that can only be transmitted by the mother if she has it? Do you know what one book says? So the paedophiles can tell if they've been sexually abused. I didn't say that, but a book I'm reading says that could be true. We don't claim to have the truth. We claim to tell you what we see. We don't want to be the richest people in the graveyard.
No.
And we don't want to spend our lives setting the scene for the day we die. We want to live, be alive, and not have to endure this nightmare that appears to be the misery that most people have to face every day. I don't know how they do it.
No.
I don't know how they do it. These people smile and say they're fine when they're clearly not.
No, they're not.
They're clearly not.
And I just want to finish on the Conservative Party. We've come from Churchill and we get to Boris Johnson.
He's a smart guy, Boris.
He plays the buffoon. I know that, and that's what they're working on. But from the levels, that is definitely. Sorry, Conservative Party, but you're not going upwards. You're going downwards. That is.
It doesn't really matter about them, does it? It matters about what we do.
It does, but in the bigger scheme of things, it does matter about what they do.
If somebody says, how can we change things? We have to change the people who are responsible for changing things.
We do have to change those people.
And we can't change the people in power. We can change the people who put them in power.
Yeah.
This is two old guys in Yorkshire who never thought they'd be doing this.
No.
Every time I picked up a microphone, it was to tell people the buffet was ready. And it was time to go home. And it was happy birthday to somebody else. You know, but now I'm picking up a microphone, no music, just you and I talking. You've never picked up a microphone before.
No.
And here we go. So, criticise us by all means. I don't mind you doing it. I don't mind at all.
Yeah.
But we're doing more than most and better than some. And yeah, we do go to work in this system because it's the only one we've got.
Yeah.
And you and I, rightly or wrongly, there's judges all around us. We are happy to say that we do provide for our family.
I'm proud to earn my living.
We do. I mean,
really am.
If you know, there
can't
is
take that away from me.
There is a way of thinking,
No.
and maybe it's just a Yorkshire way of thinking or whatever. A successful man will have found something he's good at, and he'll do it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's his number one. He's number one.
Yeah. Do you know what?
And you know what the second most important thing he should do? Is to pick a wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It brought little things. Because I go out to work and I earn my own money, it gave us the choice this weekend to buy some proper meat from a butcher's, and we bought chicken breasts, and do you know what? It tasted like chicken. And we bought some sausages, and when we cooked them, They didn't need any oil in the pan. There were no fat that came off them. They cooked lovely, and the sausages melted in your mouth. That's the deal. I didn't have to go buy them from Tesco's and find out what crap they'd put in them and all this, that, and the other, and worry about what I've eaten. I've been out. I've earned this week. I've had a few pints at the weekend. I've eaten some good food, and that'll do for me.
Just being a man is what matters.
Yeah, simple things.
Stand up for things you believe in.
Yeah, and I can spend my money where I want to spend it.
Defend your rights.
Because I can afford to spend it where I want to spend it.
There isn't a community where anybody's been allowed to live for free.
No.
There is no such thing as a free lunch. I know the socialists amongst us who say that there is another way. In their dream world, there is another way. In their dream world of how things could be, these are stories for a Friday afternoon before you go home for the weekend for 7-year-olds. Mm-hmm. These are the stories that you write about what you've been doing at the weekend. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's not real, it's not your reality, and it's not how the world works.
No.
I wish it did, but it doesn't. And my wishes just stay there. Mm-hmm. I'm not a genie, and I can't grant them for you.
No.
Deal with what's in front of you.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, it's all about respect for yourself, isn't it?
It is.
It's actually having your own respect.
And enjoying yourself.
Actually doing things you enjoy, getting involved, building things, making a difference, living a life, falling on your face, and getting back up. And it's all part of a life. The success, the not successful times, we enjoy having something to say that we've done. We were involved.
Yep.
It was us. It was my responsibility. It was my fault.
Yep.
It was my success.
Yeah.
I did that.
Yeah.
It's all part of who are you? Not what are you? I'm a plumber. No. Who are you?
Yeah.
It's just the one life, and there is no proof we come back.
No.
And it's a boxing match.
It is, yeah.
It's a boxing match.
That's what it's all about.
And that's where we're going back to. It's good night from me.
Ding, ding, round 4.
It's good night from me.
Good night from me.
Thanks for listening. And I'm sure we'll be back next week.
We will.
Now, my grandmother was a wonderful person. She taught me how to play the game Monopoly. She understood that the name of the game is to acquire. She would accumulate everything she could, and eventually she became the master of the board. And eventually, every time, she would take my last dollar, and I would quit in utter defeat. And then she would always say the same thing to me. She'd look at me and she'd say, "One day, you'll learn to play the game." One summer, I played Monopoly with a neighbor almost every day, all day long. We'd play Monopoly for hours. And that summer, I learned to play the game. I came to understand the only way to win is to make a total commitment to acquisition. I came to understand that money and possessions, that's the way that you keep score. And by the end of that summer, I was more ruthless than my grandmother. I was ready to bend the rules if I had to win that game. And I sat down with her to play that fall. I took everything she had. I destroyed her financially and psychologically. I watched her give her last dollar and quit in utter defeat. And then she had one more thing to teach me. Then she said, "Now it all goes back in the box." All those houses and hotels, all the railroads and utility companies, all that property and all that wonderful money. Now it all goes back in the box. I didn't want it to go back in the box. "No," she said. "None of it was really yours. You got all heated up about it for a while. But it was around a long time before you sat down at the board. And it will be here after you're gone. Players come and players go. But it all goes back in the box. Houses and cars, titles and clothes, filled barns, bulging portfolios, even your body. Because the fact is that everything I clutch and consume and hoard is going to go back in the box, and I'm going to lose it all. Not much of an ROI on that. You have to ask yourself, when you finally get the ultimate promotion, when you've made the ultimate purchase, when you buy the ultimate home, when you have stored up financial security and climbed the ladder of success to the highest rung you can possibly climb it, and the thrill wears off, and it will wear off, then what? How far do you have to walk down that road before you see where it leads? Surely you understand, it'll never be enough. So you have to ask yourself the question, what matters?